You asked for a follow-up, and we're here to deliver. At the start of the year, I put out a video about all kinds of little details about the Blue Lock manga that got lost in translation. And since you really seem to like it, and I have more than enough notes left, we're here for part 2. Like last time, this video is a close collaboration with a good friend of mine who read Blue Lock in the original Japanese and sent me all kinds of linguistic observations during the process. So really, the credit isn't that much with me, as with last time, it's with her, and I'm very happy to have her introduce herself now.
Hi everyone, my name is Snek, and I've been yapping with Sean about manga for almost 20 years now. My extreme weeb levels resulted in me studying Japanese, and although I'm not quite fluent yet, I've reached a level where I can comfortably read manga. Around a year and a half ago, Sean asked me to help him out with some Japanese for a video he was working on, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Since he was so hyped about this edgy football comic, I decided to start reading it myself in Japanese, and I became absolutely obsessed with Blue Lock, sending Sean around 800 screenshots with my observations along the way. Since the previous video did so well, we thought it might be fun for me to directly share some of my experiences reading Blue Lock in Japanese.
Yeah, I'm really excited to actually co-present the video this time around. Also, before we get started, if you like what I do consider subscribing to my Patreon. You get access to my podcast where I discuss the new Blue Lock chapter every week and also help keep the channel out of the red. So anyways, let's cut to the chase. You're probably here for some more insults and innuendo, so might as well get that out of the way. Firstly, and I'm mainly telling you this because it's just really funny, when Isagi humiliates Kaiser after scoring the winning goal of the PXG match, the Japanese version actually also has him address his bitter rival in English. However, he doesn't call Kaiser my ultimate clown, but my best Pierrot. Yeah, I get why Isagi's English had to be retranslated into English. But here's where it gets really interesting. There's a device in Japanese writing called gikun, which involves adding kanji characters below a word in kana. For all intents and purposes, what the characters actually say is the kana reading on top, but the kanji are like this kind of explanation. This technique was originally used to provide Japanese translations for foreign loanwords, but over time, writers also started using it to add extra layers of nuance to their text, and Blue Lock really makes full use of the possibility. I hope this all makes sense, but in case you are interested in hearing more about Blue Lock's use of gikun readings, I discuss it in much greater detail in my first video. Anyways, a few moments before the most savage burn in the entire series, Isagi tells Kaiser that he fell short because he failed to become an emotionless machine. In Japanese, Isagi also uses the English word machine in katakana. However, the term is accompanied by kanji reading dogu, tool. That term gets used on multiple significant junctions in the NEL, by the way, as I discuss in my analysis of the PXG match. So anyways, a few pages later, Isagi calls Kaiser his clown, his Pierrot, and the loanword again gets a kanji gloss, and this reads doke, which means clown in Japanese. To put it simply, Kaiser failed to become a dogu, and that makes him a doke. And yes, the do part is written with the exact same kanji. So I don't want to say that the entire NEL has been building up to a singular pun, but the entire NEL has kind of been building up to a singular pun. Something very different now. Let's turn forward a few chapters to the moment where Isagi tastes the full pleasure of victory, his own unique ecstatic experience. Or, in Japanese,
Nojiru Taiken, which would quite literally translate to brain juice experience. Now, this rather juicy term did not show up in the dictionary I normally use, but luckily the Japanese Wikipedia had a page about the phrase brain juices. Apparently, this is a concept introduced in the 90s to describe the dopamine rush you get when you expect a big win in Pachinko. As the gambling addiction researcher Kikunori Shinohara puts it, it's a brain drug that overflows during the thrilling moments that are unique to gambling. Well, apparently not only unique to gambling, but also to becoming Blue Lock's #1. When further researching this word, I got two kinds of hits. One was Japanese posts related to Blue Lock, and the other was this very cursed category of YouTube videos called Brain Juice Experience ASMR, which shows footage from actual Pachinko machines. This is how the Japanese gambling industry diabolically manipulates its victims' brain juices so that they keep forking over their hard-earned savings. I had to suffer through this, so now so do you. Now, I also want to share how the reading experience itself can be a bit different in the Japanese and English versions, sometimes due to the placement of words. In Japanese, you only need 4 characters to express the brain juice experience, but in English you need around 18 letters, which sometimes causes issues in how to organize your canvas. The editors of the English version made a choice to put the words diagonally, while in the Japanese they are centered around Isagi's forehead. In the English version, when your eyes move from ecstatic to experience, they glide from Isagi's hair to his nose to his hands. But in the Japanese version, your eyes will start at nojiru, briefly pause where his grey matter is, before going to taiken, which for me definitely released way more brain juices, making this spread probably one of my favorite in the series.
But more than that, the term brain juices actually appears in one earlier moment in the series, after Shido scores his first goal in the U20 match. There he exclaims, "Himaruze no jiru. Ah, iku. Come together, brain juices. I'm coming. Followed by a beautiful series of onomatopoeias that mimic the complete audio motor sensation of an ejaculation. Do pew! So in Blue Lock, this brain juice experience is more than just a dopamine high. It also represents the ecstatic pleasure of orgasm. And with that in mind, we can recontextualize the entire second half of the PXG match. As the match becomes increasingly unhinged, the various characters become preoccupied with pursuing their pleasures. Charles reduces Shido and Rin to a pair of hungry beasts competing for the pleasure of a goal. Then, and I'm very grateful to one of my commenters on the PXG video for pointing this out because it's so obvious yet completely went over my head, Rin's nosebleed after his goal is not very subtle manga code for sexual arousal. And thereafter, in the furious struggle for the final goal, his behavior is fueled by a fervent desire to get physical with Isagi. Shido, meanwhile, starts talking about how he's taken far too long to come. Isagi also comments on how he's never experienced such pleasure as when he overcame Rin. So on a symbolic level, the latter parts of the PXG match see a mountain escalation of arousal among its major players, a crescendo waiting for the inevitable release. And that climax is demarcated by the orgasmic pleasure of scoring the winning goal, an ecstatic experience reserved exclusively for the number 1. Okay, I think it's time for a bit of a palate cleanser. Let's turn to chapter 300, where Isagi calls out to Nagi that he shouldn't stop playing football. In the Japanese, that is actually a direct callback to the cringiest line in the series. The very first thing Isagi ever says to Nagi is, "Don't underestimate soccer. Saka namena." That comes full circle in Isagi's final words to Nagi as he's expelled from Blue Lock. Saka yamena.
Reacting to that, I do feel like Saka namena sounds way less cringe in the original Japanese than in English. But that might also be because my Japanese cringe sensors have not fully developed yet. Skills like being able to detect cringe are hard to learn from textbooks, which is why it's important to listen and read a lot to get used to the different nuances in the language that you're studying. Or, like the Japanese language YouTubers say, just immerse, bro. One of the literary devices that I learned about mostly through reading books and manga is Yakuwaringo, literally role language. This refers to the way Japanese speakers use different language depending on their age, gender, social standing and personality. English, of course, has similar concepts. For example, a character addressing their teacher with "What's up, motherfucker?" would tell you a lot about them. Japanese, however, takes this concept to a whole nother level because it is full of quite subtle linguistic nuances that can shift the tone immediately. One of the ways Yakuwaringo can be used in novels is to make it clear who is speaking. While English authors often specify the speaker by adding a set and then a character name, in Japanese this can be skipped. Take, for example, this page from the Blue Lock light novel. Here you can see a dialogue between 6-year-old Barou and his parents. All the sentences between the square brackets are pieces of dialogue. Now, I've highlighted for you who is speaking which sentence, and you can see bits of Yakuwaringo in red. Small details like Barou's mom calling him Shou-chan while his dad calls him Shoe. Barou using ore, the word for I, without kanji, and his mom using more effeminate verb conjugations than his dad, make it completely unnecessary to actually specify who is speaking. I have to say that I really had to get used to this the first time I read a book in Japanese, because you have to simultaneously pay attention to the meaning of the sentence and the role language of the speaker. Having read a few novels though, this has sharpened my Yakuwaringo sensors and made me notice some interesting things while reading Blue Lock. Some characters have a unique way of speaking. Bachira is cutesy and cat-like, for example saying nyaruhodo instead of naruhodo, where nya is the sound that cats make in Japanese. Rin sometimes doesn't even bother to fully pronounce words, fully emphasizing that he's just too cool for school. Here, he calls Kaiser his favorite insult, tepid, or in Japanese, nurui, but he just pronounces it like nuri. Rin really likes to stir his vowels together a bit, making him for me the second most difficult character to understand. Now, you can not only use Yakuwaringo to quickly establish a character, but switches in speech patterns can be used to signify a mood change. Take for example the interview Isagi gives after the Munchine match. Isagi starts his first answer using boku, which is a way more humble version of I than his usual ore, and it stood out immediately to me, as Isagi trying his very best to come across as a certified good boy for national television. The interviewer even comments on this by saying, "What an innocent and nice kid, this is going to be easy." However, after Isagi starts getting fired up again, he immediately switches back to his usual ore, which underscores this mood switch. Something similar is seen with his interactions with Noah during the PXG match, where he first is using the polite form mas for his verb endings, when asking his idol for advice. But he drops this after he discovers Noah's true intention and rejects his master. Another character that regularly switches up his speaking patterns, very fittingly, is our comedian, Reo. From him speaking very politely to Ego or Prince when they first meet, to him speaking very casually and laid back to Nagi or Prince when they start to get more familiar, to him speaking in a more neutral style between matches. He even starts using some gamer lingo when he says that he perfectly captured his homework, or in Japanese, Sukudai Kanzen Kouryaku. In this phrase, perfect completion has the gikun kansto, which is gamer lingo for counterstop, or saying that you have maxed out your stats. And kouryaku is also the term used for walkthroughs and strategy guides in Japanese.
That's a detail I find really sweet actually. Reo is still struggling to process his separation from Nagi at this stage, to the point that he adopts Nagi's signature catchphrase. And right afterwards, he subconsciously adopts the kind of gamer slang that he might have heard from Nagi. Let's touch on something entirely different. I was called out by one of my viewers for not mentioning this in the previous video, so here we are. The sequence from Kaiser's flashback to his inevitable return to Zero include a whole slew of highly significant gikun usage. When Kaiser first plays with his ball, and for once I swear there's no innuendo here, he talks about how it flies away when you throw it. In the Japanese, the pronoun he uses is soitsu, that person. A remarkably anthropomorphic way of describing an inanimate object. And to highlight this even further, soitsu is accompanied by gikun of the kanji reading tama, the Japanese word for ball. The implication here is that Kaiser talks about his ball as if it's a human being, and that idea of course gets developed further over the course of the PXG match. In marked contrast, look at the way Kaiser differentiates himself from his teammates in Bastard München by considering them real human beings that were wanted and loved. Shonen manga always includes a kind of subtitles called furigana above its kanji characters to help younger readers who might not be familiar with each of the characters. In this particular scene, the furigana of the character for ningen, human, is not written in hiragana, as would normally be the case, but in katakana, the script used for foreign loanwords. By implication, being human is an entirely foreign concept to Kaiser. Flash forward 2 chapters, and the gikun usage gets really intense. Let's look at the scene where Isagi calls Kaiser a clown and declares that he has usurped his rival's place as the star of the team. The Japanese combines Kaiser in katakana with our new favorite kanji for clown, doke. By implication, the two have become synonymous. Meanwhile, when Isagi declares himself the protagonist, Shuyaku, the kanji character is accompanied with katakana reading kusoyaro, bastard. We're going into full Kaiser psychology here. In his warped worldview, power becomes manifest by our ability to harm others, so he equates being a miserable asshole with holding the starring role. What's also more transparent in Japanese is the degree to which Kaiser has internalized his self-loathing. When Kaiser returns to Zero, to being a piece of shit, the original has him say Zero ni nare, become zero, and then kusobutsu, a piece of shit, in kanji. But directly above that phrase, it says Michaeru, Michael. This moment represents Kaiser casting off everything he used to cover up his insecurities about his self-worth and accepting how he truly sees himself. deep within, he never escaped the horrific views that his father beat into him, that he is nothing but a piece of shit. Also, just as an aside, because I regularly get comments about my pronunciation of Kaiser's name from presumably Anglophone readers. Hardcore for life, Michael. In my defense, the Japanese rendition of the name actually approximates the German pronunciation, Michael Kaiser.
On the flip side, for me, it was sometimes pretty hard to recognize the intentions behind the katakana I's names. While Michael Kaiser was pretty clear, I had no idea what to make of the name Tsunahi for the first few chapters after he was introduced. And my first message to Sean about him was snappy keeping it real. But for me, the most cursed transliteration that made me really scratch my head was Shadoru Shu Badie.
Bonus points for anyone who can figure out the blue lock character this refers to. Anyways, back to Kaiser. As he returns to his origins, he talks about the zero at the root of his ego. In Japanese, there is again a highly significant use of gikun here. The loanword ego is glossed by kanji reading akui, malice. His malicious desire to prove his existence by hurting others is the manifestation of his underlying ego. This entire sequence is then capped off with Kaiser understanding the true origins of his ego, the ball that represented his first act of rebellion. And when the official English translation has Kaiser say that the root of his ego is you, my ball, that is actually a great way to capture another double reading. In the original, Kaiser just says you, omae, but for clarification, omae is accompanied with the same kanji I mentioned earlier, tama, which means ball. He then continues by calling his ball a kusobutsu, a piece of shit, which gets glossed by kanji reading kyodotai, which means something to the effect of collective or community. But in this instance, perhaps a better rendition would be companion. Just for comparison, that term is also used in chapter 2, where Ego describes the 11 members of Team Z as sharing a common destiny. In Japanese, he glosses the English word 11 with gikun reading kyodotai. The implication being they won't be just a team of 11 players, but a true community whose fates are closely intertwined. So I hope that kind of helps to illustrate the way Kaiser thinks of himself and his ball. They are also one and the same, suffering horrific abuse in silence. This whole sequence of double words reaches its zenith in the lead up to Kaiser's goal. When he draws out luck, Kaiser calls out, "Let's go, piece of shit." In the Japanese, we again get the combination of kusobutsu, within gikun the kanji for a football, shukyu. Interestingly enough, the gikun actually removes a level of ambiguity here. From ikuzo kusobutsu alone, you could interpret it as a reference to either the ball or himself. The gikun here makes it clear that Kaiser is referring exclusively to the ball that he's subjecting to further physical abuse. So, to put all the scattered pieces together, Kaiser dug up the memories of how he projected himself onto his ball and how that gave rise to his ego, his identity. And since he has finally shed off the useless baggage and is fully attuned to his true self, he is rewarded by a stroke of luck where the ball, his fellow piece of shit, becomes his greatest ally. There's a final Kaiser-related gikun reading I also want to draw attention to in this context. When our favourite rose-themed striker takes the penalty, he zeroes in on his true self and fuels his shot with his yearning for love. In the original, the kanji reading I, love, are placed below the word goal, goru, in katakana. This underscores how, as a striker, Kaiser's yearning for love is manifested in his desire to score goals. Now, one thing I do want to stress right here. All this talk about secret double readings of words in the original might make it seem like there are truths hidden from us plebs who have to access Blue Lock through translation. However, most everything I've discussed in relation to Kaiser's psychology here is clear even without the gikun readings. These kanji glosses might add a little bit of nuance or clarification, but they're not a substitute for proper writing.
This is something Sean already touched on earlier, but the Japanese language can be written with either kanji or kana. Very roughly speaking, kanji is used for nouns, adjective stems, and verb stems. Katakana is used for things like loanwords, and hiragana can be seen as the glue that binds the sentences together. However, did you know that the wrong script can be used deliberately for certain effect? This is similar to how in English all caps can be used for screaming, and alternating between uppercase and lowercase makes you sound like a milking sponge. Sometimes hiragana is used to show that a certain character is unfamiliar with a certain word. When Bachira's mother explains to him that his monster might be an imaginary friend, she uses this as an English loanword, imaginary funendo. However, since Bachira in this scene is still too young to know English, he repeats the phrase in hiragana. Similarly, when Kaiser is teaching Ness about the Magnus effect, Ness repeats this word in hiragana to show that he totally did not pay attention at his parents' science lessons. Sometimes katakana instead of kanji is used to create an unhinged or horror-like effect. Here, Rin repeats the word for kill 3 times, korosu, korosu, korosu. But the third time it's typed in katakana, showing that he has absolutely lost it. In the episode Nagi spin-off manga, the script switch-up is used to poke fun at Zantetsu's intelligence. Might I add that as someone not completely fluent in the language yet, Zantetsu was the hardest character for me to understand, by far. Since his whole gag is that he tries to use proverbs but ends up using them incorrectly, this can be pretty confusing if you have not learned these proverbs before. For example, the famous Buddhist saying Tenjo Tenge Yuika Dokuson, or in English, I alone am the honored one, which you weaves might know from Jujutsu Kaisen, is butchered by Zantetsu as Tenjo Tenge Yuiga Dokuso, replacing the last kanji for honor with the kanji for run. Luckily, we have more academically inclined characters like Reo and Nagi who often correct his mistakes. And this trio stars in one of my favorite kana jokes. In the match against Team W, Reo tries to send a complicated pass to Nagi, who gets blocked by 3 players. Nagi then asks Zantetsu if this ball is within his range, for which he uses the English loanword renji. Zantetsu does not recognize renji as in range, but he does know it in a different context. Denshi renji, or microwave, which is shown by him repeating renji and then imagining a little microwave that says Zantetsu then asks Reo how to make his microwave go and Reo says that this cooperation will be a win-win situation for them. Since Reo is an educated boy who is able to speak English, the word is written in the Latin alphabet, together with win-win in katakana, as expected for a loanword. Zantetsu asks what the win-win even is, using hiragana to show that he does not recognize the phrase, or that they originate from English, and Nagi explains the meaning. Zantetsu then immediately repeats win-win the next page, this time using the same English letters that Reo used before, but using hiragana over it, giving the idea that he's just parroting Reo without really realizing what he's saying. And then later, right before the match against Team Z, when Kuon is trying to strike a deal, Zantetsu tries out his newly acquired vocabulary and asks Kuon, full hiragana, if this deal will be a win-win for them. Kuon, who does recognize the phrase, reacts with a indeed a win-win in katakana. This whole sequence was one of my favorite gags, since it shows that, although school is not really Zantetsu's forte, he tries hard to use some fancy sounding vocabulary.
One more treat before we let you go. After the 3v3, Barou tells Isagi that he isn't the kind of chicken who's afraid of change. Now, I have a low-key obsession with the significance of meat consumption in Blue Lock. Check out my video on the power of hunger for more about that. And I really like the visual symbolism of this scene. The previous match concluded with Isagi and Barou winning by reciprocally devouring each other, and that dynamic is underscored in the aftermath by having Barou devour a steak right in front of Isagi's eyes. Now, the word chicken is really interesting in such a context, right? The manga consistently employs metaphors comparing strikers, and Barou in particular, to carnivorous beasts, and scoring goals to fill in your stomach. So when Barou states that he's not a chicken while chomping down on a slab of dead animal, he's emphasizing that he's a predator and not the prey. Interestingly enough, this point is even clearer in the original. In Japanese, there is a distinction between a niwatori, which predominantly refers to a chicken as in the actual bird, and the loanword chikin, which refers mostly to the prepared version of the bird, like fraido chicken, or to a coward. It's similar to how tuna as in the fish would be called maguro, but the canned variant uses the English loanword tsuna. So in the original, Barou specifically says that he's not a chicken, i.e. that he's not a delectable meal for a hungry predator to devour. However, the other connotation of the word chicken is also drawn out through an accompanying gikun. The katakana reading chicken is glossed by kanji reading okubyomono, coward. Snek actually drew my attention to a really significant parallel to the Barou scene while she was reading the Japanese version of volume 35. When Buratsuta chastises Nagi for his refusal to betray Blue Lock, he mocks him as a pride chicken who will end up spending the rest of his life wallowing in memories of his former greatness. And what do you know, the Japanese has Buratsuta characterize Nagi as a chicken glossed with the exact same gikun for cowards that Barou used back in the second selection. The manga seems to be drawing a very deliberate comparison here. Barou had almost given up on his ambition and become a shell of his former self, but he swallowed his pride and embraced change. Meanwhile, Nagi post-NEL is unable to accept change and is driven by pure nostalgia for his glory days. And that's what makes him the kind of cowardly chicken that Barou refused to become.
Well, I hope you've learned something new today, either about Blue Lock or about the Japanese language. After this experience, I've been playing around with the idea of starting my own YouTube channel to share some more experiences of reading manga and light novels in their original language. Let me know in the comments if this is something you would like to watch. I've had a lot of fun working on this video, so thank you all for watching, and thank you Sean for having me on here.
One other thing, this video actually marks my 3-year anniversary on YouTube, which is completely bonkers to me. From the bottom of my heart, thanks so much to all of you for being part of this crazy project. I genuinely wouldn't be still doing this if it weren't for all your support. I recently put out a survey because I was curious through what video you had discovered the channel and where my viewers are actually based. I got responses from 36 different countries all across the globe, which is absolutely astonishing to me. Also, I got so many lovely messages from people that really filled my heart. I can't respond to everyone here unfortunately, but I did read everything and really appreciate all the kind words. One of my viewers wrote in that my analyses have actually encouraged them to start writing their own essays to organize their thoughts about the new Blue Lock chapter every week, and this has been unbelievably rewarding for them. That's an incredible compliment. I'm so glad I've been able to motivate you. I fully agree that writing can be such a tremendously fulfilling endeavor. If you've ever thought about trying your hand at it, do it. Right now. Stop procrastinating. Put some words to paper before the end of the day. I guarantee that it'll be worth your time. I've also gotten a lot of other people saying that I've given them so much more appreciation for the depth of Blue Lock. That really makes me happy to hear. That actually ties into a question I got from my friend and fellow BlueTuber Serena Rosa, who asked me about my favorite part of being a Blue Lock content creator. Serena actually made her big YouTube comeback the past months, so do check her out. Anyways, for me it's easily the moments of discovery. When I'm sitting down to write and suddenly I had this eureka moment. There's no better way to organize your thoughts than by actually putting words to the page. Then, from a viewer from Slovakia, that goofy PFP has been living in my head for 2 years. Fuck you. Lubim. And a related query, is that your teeth in the channel icon? I wish. That would have been such a power move. The picture is the result of a quick and dirty Photoshop during a Discord call with some of my mates where someone asked what if Pokemon had teeth. And the picture has just always cracked me up ever since. Someone asked, age 21? I'm not sure if that's a typo because you're 10 years off and I'm definitely not the world's hairiest 11-year-old. One of you wrote in that they have vivid memories of putting off watching the queer narratives of Blue Lock because their camp wasn't represented in the thumbnail. Just know that I hope your ship is thriving. Someone else asked for a Bachira video. I've actually got you covered already. Go look up why Bachira is Isagi's first friend. It's one of the earliest Blue Lock videos I ever did, and it holds up surprisingly well, I think. I actually sort of predicted Bachira scoring the first goal of the U20 World Cup in that one. If you don't believe me, do check it out. Shoutouts to a seriously long-time viewer from Estonia who said I've been putting out banger after banger. So, what does a horny Estonian say when asked about the length of a year? Kaks taste good. Someone else asked if I have a chat community, like a Discord server or anything. I've gotten this question several times over the years, and the answer is unfortunately no, and honestly, I don't have any interest in starting one either. I don't want Blue Lock to take over my life completely, and there are simply lots of other things I'd rather do than chat with strangers on the internet all day. Sorry about that one. A viewer from France apologized for not being able to contribute on Patreon. Pas de problème. There are so many creative people I'd love to support financially, more than I could afford to do so myself as well. Just know I appreciate any kind of support. Also, funnily enough, both this viewer and someone else asked for videos on Nagi and Reo. I put out the survey before my previous video, so I hope that one didn't disappoint. All that being said though, I am genuinely grateful for everyone who is able to chip in and help me cover with my channel related expenses, in particular my €10 patrons. Alex Mackay, Jesus Cujo, Liam Dunseith, McJCave18, Melody and Orangey Legend. My next project will hopefully be a full analysis of the Nigeria match, kind of depending on when that wraps up. So hopefully until then, slangafol. Or, in Japanese,
脳汁体験